Girls hockey playoffs are underway, boys hockey playoffs are upcoming, and pretty soon we're going to be getting into basketball playoffs as well, as they're getting towards the end of their regular season. We've got all that coming up next.
Welcome back to another episode of SportsZone. I'm Toby Stenga. She is Alexis Huss. Alexis, it's that time of year where the playoffs have started, and it is just about a month and a half of solid playoffs across a lot of team sports, individual sports, and this is, in my opinion, for high school sports, probably the best time of year.
Yeah, I think once you get into February, especially March, like if you've still got some of the hockey teams going, it's really fun. So unfortunately, some of our teams are already finished, but we do have a lot to look forward to still over the next few weeks to months.
Unfortunately, this was probably our quickest season of girls hockey playoffs, but we'll get through that right now. This team that got the lone win was Simley down in Section 1A. They, like we said all year, this section was pretty predictable, the seedings. They got the 3 seed, and they got to host a team that was basically maybe everybody involved would have liked to have a bye in that one, except maybe the Spartans themselves.
Right.
10-0 win over South Central. It was just a beatdown. I missed that one. You were there, but it looks like it was just, you sent me a text after the first period. Shots on goal, 20-2.
Yeah.
That said it all, and that's kind of what we expected.
Yeah, it was, I think, 4-0 about 5 minutes into the game. So, I mean, it was one of those games where even as a broadcaster, your head is just spinning, and you can't even imagine what the players on the ice are feeling. So, great for Simley to really take care of business. That is one of those games you absolutely have to have, not a team that you can lose to. South Central came in 0 wins on the season. They were allowing about 10 goals per game. That's how many Simley put on them. A lot of different players scoring for Simley, which was always great to see, and they took care of business in that first game.
That would advance them to face the 2 seed Albert Lee, and Simley just kind of ran into a really good team as the 2 seed. They were outshot 51-16 to Albert Lee, losing 5-1. Mackenzie Reese in net, she had a really good game, 46 saves. She had to face over 50 shots, which she's kind of had to face a lot of
all
shots
season,
this year. But tough loss, but a decent run for Simley this year again.
Yeah, they made it 1 game further than they did last season. They finished with about nearly identical records, just 1 more tie this season than they had last year, 12 wins in each of the last 2 years here. The bad news for Simley is they are losing Ella Sanders and Mackenzie Reese next year. So their leading scorer and their top goaltender both will be graduating. And honestly, after Sanders, there wasn't a lot of depth in scoring. So I'm curious to see what this Simley team is going to look like next year, who's going to fill those shoes. But hopefully they'll have players ready to step up and kind of lead the way.
Bad news, you lose Sanders. And like you said, Reese. Good news, a lot of young talent on this team, super young team. So that bodes well moving forward. This section will end with Dodge County and Albert Lee for the championship. Dodge County coming off a 15-0 win in the semis. So they look to be a solid #1 seed. Let's jump up to Section 4-2A. 2 Rivers, who they lost. They ended their season 16-9-1. However, this is the best season the Riveters have had since doing the co-op with St. Paul. And I tell you what, this is not a game that I thought the Riveters were going to be in. They lost to an undefeated Woodbury team 2-1, and this was a game going into the third. So
tied.
This was the shocker of the tournament for me, and this was great to see for the Riveters. I'm very happy to see them give Woodbury a scare. We saw Woodbury earlier in the year. They were a solid team.
They were,
so good on the Riveters, but like we said all year, this section was loaded.
Yeah, that game against Woodbury was tied going into the third period. Woodbury did get on the board first. 2 Rivers tied it in the second, and they just allowed that go-ahead goal in the third. They were never able to bounce back from. Like you said, great season for them. The last time they even had double-digit wins was 2022, 2023, but it's the best season they've had in a long time. So they had 4 players with over 20 points on the season. So a lot to like about this Riveters team. They just ran into a really good Woodbury team, which we kind of knew was going to happen heading into the playoffs.
Well, and you still have in the semis, you have Hill, the 1 seed who's ranked #1, Woodbury who's ranked 6th, and Stillwater who's ranked 15th. So this section's loaded. Let's close with Section 4A. This is the first time I can remember that we have not covered a game in this section. And it's going to stay that way for this year. South St. Paul got the 5 seed, and they had to take on 4-seeded Minneapolis. And South St. Paul, they actually outshot Minneapolis, but they lost 3-1. Tough season. finished with just 5 wins, probably their South St. Paul's worst season in program history. But that's all right. It's behind them now. They can move forward. But there were some things to like about the team this year.
Yeah, I mean, their 2 goaltenders were really young. So if you build that talent up and kind of get them more used to the system, get a little bit more experience under their belt, and if you can do all that, hopefully those are going to be some good goaltenders for them within a few years' time. They lost the final 4 games of the regular season, so they were heading into the playoffs kind of on a bit of a skid. They had 13 games where they scored 1 or fewer goals, so they just lacked some scoring at times, and because their goaltenders were so young, they got in some tough positions where they just couldn't get out of them. And like you said, I went back to every year that's online right now, which is 15 years of data. It's been over 15 years, at least what's online, since the last time they lost in the section quarterfinal game. They have at least won that first game every year over the last 15 years, and probably even longer than that for what's online. So just a tough year for the South St. Paul Packers.
Well, and just off memory, if you go back further than that, they were making runs to state, if not winning state.
Back when I was in high school,
so, Yes, for sure. Bad news is they graduate 4 seniors. Good news is, again, super young team, a lot of players coming back. You've got a year under your belt for your goaltenders, which is, I think, huge. Visitation got your 6th seed. They had to play Holy Angels. This was going to be a tough one for Viz no matter what. They lost 3-0. They were outshot 48-15, and they just ended a tough season as well. Amelia Frederick in net, she faced almost 50 shots, saved all but 3, so she had a 940 save percentage in that game, which is great, but another tough seasons for Viz.
Yeah, they had 6 one-goal losses this year, which is tough when you rack up that many games where you fall just short in a 1-goal game. They went 3-1-2 to close out the regular season, so they were finishing strong, but just couldn't get the job done against a good Holy Angels team.
Let's jump over to the boys, and let's start with St. Thomas Academy. I tell you what, we saw the cadets. They hosted Shakopee.
Man, that was a fun game.
Shakopee was ranked 3rd. St. Thomas was ranked 4th in state coming in. We thought it would be a close game, and like we saw with Holy Angels earlier in the year, St. Thomas kind of put a beating down on the Sabres. This was a very, very fun game, but St. Thomas, man, they look so good out there.
And they look like they do it with such minimal effort. It's like they go from 0 to 50 to 50 to 100 like the snap of a fingers. And it's like, where did that come from? They looked like they did to start the game, but all of a sudden they're leading 5-0. So they just have this ability to turn it on. And when you have as many players on the roster as they do who have the ability to get points, I mean, if you look up and down their roster, 7 players are averaging at least a point per game. 3 of them are averaging 2 per game. And of everyone who's played every game this season, no one has less than 5 points. So it doesn't matter what line is out there, defense, offense, everybody's getting in on the action, and their 9th grade goaltender, Owen Ryan, stops just about everything that comes his way. He's allowing under 1.5 goals per game, and he's got about a 9.5 save percentage, something crazy like that. So they took care of business against a team who we thought was going to be a much closer game, and they really handled them nicely. Coming off of a very cold hockey day game, they didn't miss a beat. They got right back to work and took care of business against a great Shakopee team.
9 straight wins at this point. They've outscored their opponents 53-5 in that stretch with 4 shutouts. I did find a new stat since our last couple shows because we're kind of running out of stats.
I feel like it's the same thing every week.
Of all the goalies in Minnesota who have their stats on the hub, any goalies that have played more than basically 2 games, 100 minutes, and have seen 20-plus shots, Owen Ryan and Jackson Curry have the top 2 save percentages in the state. And one's your starter, one's your backup who is having a hard time getting on the ice. Very impressive. St. Thomas hosts Hill on Thursday for basically, St. Thomas has the conference. Unless Hill can beat them, then they split. But they're looking like they're probably going to be the #1 seed in the section. The section loaded with Rosemount and Cretin, but St. Thomas, I mean, they looked awesome. 2 Rivers, 4-2-1 since the last show over about the last month. They have kind of been picking things up lately, almost in that stretch, almost scoring 4 goals per game. So they're kind of picking up the scoring. They're in the same section with St. Thomas though, so they're going to kind of be hurting a little bit. But they have at Hastings, Simley, and St. Paul Academy. Probably should be all wins. So that could put their overall finishing record at 12-11-2 at the end of the regular season. So they can maybe jump up a spot or 2 in the section, which you got to get up, hopefully maybe into that 5 seed if possible, to avoid one of those juggernauts in the first round.
Well, this is their window right here. They've got 8 seniors graduating after this season, including their starting goaltender, Knorrier, and all 3 of their leading scorers. So this is the season you want to try to get it done in. But like you said, it's going to be tough. That path to the state tournament is not going to be easy for them. And something that I would like to see them do better in these last few games, which I think they have the ability to. They've been outscored almost double in the third periods of games, 25-13, and they have no wins in overtime. They have a couple ties, but they've lost 2 games in overtime. So I want to see them close out games a little bit better. You're going to need that ability once it gets to the playoffs, but we'll see if they can get the job done. It won't be easy.
Yeah, they need to win all their games, then hope Egan loses all their games, and then hope for a miracle that they can jump Eastview and maybe jump Egan. They did lose to Egan earlier in a close one. But let's jump over to Section 4A. South St. Paul, 4-3 over the last 7 games. But like we talked about last show, they were in that little dogfight with Tartan and Simley. They beat Tartan 5-0, beat Simley 6-1. So they have, since the last show, helped themselves out immensely. And if you throw out that one result against St. Thomas, I think it was 11-0 or 12-0, they're scoring 5 goals a game and giving up 2 goals a game over this last few weeks. So they're clicking at the right time. They're playing some really good hockey at the right time. Again, you had a chance to see that game last Thursday against Tartan, but I'm liking what I'm seeing on paper from the Packers.
Yeah, they were taking care of business. They were fun to watch, and Tartan is a team that they should be able to beat, and they did. They got some good goaltending when they needed it, and their final opponent of the season is tonight. We're recording this on a Monday. They play Irondale on Monday, February 9th here, who's about a 500 team, so they should be able to have a good battle with Irondale, see if they can come out on the winning side of that. They've already doubled their win total from last year, just 6 wins last season. And, you know, a lot of the teams they've recently lost to are really good teams. They've lost to Matamidi, Hill Murray, you mentioned the St. Thomas Academy game, Chisago Lakes. These are all solid teams. So they're not losing any clunkers. They're taking care of business when they need to, and they've got some really good talent on that team that's really fun to watch when they get going.
That game tonight against Irondale is going to be for the 4 seed in the section, so that's going to be a huge game. Last 7 games, Jackson Horning, 10 assists. Roman Knight, 11 goals over the last 7 games. So they're playing really good hockey, scoring the puck. Simley, they have 2 games left at Dodge County, at 2 Rivers. They're trying to fight with Tartan to see who can get out of that play-in game, and they've split with Tartan. So they need to try to win these last 2. They're going to be tough, but they need some help from Tartan, losing some games. But this is a Simley team over the last 15 games, only scoring 1.3 goals a game. So they are kind of stumbling a little bit down the stretch. Yeah,
they've had some issues. Their leading goal scorer is just a 9th grader, which is great news in the sense that you're going to have them for a handful more of years, but you want those upperclassmen to be leading the way, especially this late in the season. And for them, Noah Schwab, a freshman, is their leading scorer, who is a great player, but they just haven't gotten much other help. Their goaltenders are splitting time, allowing quite a bit of goals on average per game. And in 14 games this year, they've scored 1 or fewer goals. That, by the way, includes a 1-0 win that they had earlier in the season. So it hasn't quite been their year. They're sitting well below 500, but a few games to try to turn that around a little bit.
Well, brackets come out this weekend, so it's going to be very interesting. There's a lot that can happen just this week alone, so it's going to be fun. We'll take a break. We'll be back with Hoops right after this. Welcome back to SportsZone. She's Alexis. I'm Toby. We talked about the next round of playoffs for hockey next week. We're about a week after that is girls basketball, and things are getting crazy in these sections already. It's going to be very big last week and a half for section seating. Let's start in section 4A, and let's start with the Visitation Blazers, a team that right now is sitting in the number 2 slot for that section. Since the last show, they're 4-2, and they've just kind of been clicking along, and they've been doing their thing, and they've got some good wins. They close at Cooper, against Richfield, at Fridley, and then against De La Salle. Should finish 3-1, maybe 2-2. So that's a stretch they really got to play good basketball in. But they have set themselves up very well in this section for a good playoff seeding. Yeah, they've got 13 wins on the season as of now. Like you said, they're going to have a couple challenging games to close out the year. But you know what? You want to be playing those games at that point in the season. You don't want easy games at the end of the year. You want to see what a challenge is going to look like. You want to see your team be able to compete, and they're going to get that in some of their remaining games. Still, the same players are leading the way for this team. Yeager, Warford, Jacobson, all averaging about 10 points per game or more. 3 additional players are averaging about 6 or 7 points per game. So they've kind of got those sweet spots. You've got the couple that are in double digits. You've got the couple that are, anywhere between 5 to 8 points per game. And then, of course, you've got a couple that are averaging just a few points per game. They've scored 65 or more points 10 times this season. That includes both wins and losses. So, I mean, they're getting the job done. They're getting their points. They're getting their wins. And they've got a chance here to still close out with a few more. They've lost 2 games in a row for the first time since late December/early January. So they've really been able to take care of business. They haven't gotten into too many of those bad losing streaks this year. And you talk about Jacobson. She's scoring 15 points a game over her last 5. So she's kind of had an uptick in scoring. St. Clair Lutheran and Prep tonight. I think Viz on the outside probably cheering for a Prep loss
right.
because they're trying to hold on to that 2 seed. If we jump over to St. Clair Lutheran, who again is sitting right now QRF-wise in the 5th spot, and they play the team right above them in Prep tonight. That's going to be a great game. It's going to be a lot of fun. They have won 6 in a row, and they finish with an insanely tough schedule. But their typical players are getting after it. Callie Oakland against New Life Academy since the last show, 32 points, 25 boards. She also had 29 rebounds against Legacy. Amaya Penn averaging 26 points per game over the last 4. And worst, she's back. She missed 2 weeks. She's back. She's put up double digits. She put up 10 against South St. Paul, 9 against Legacy. She's huge to get back as that third kind of leading scoring punch. So they're looking good. I'm really excited to see what they do tonight because they're heating up at the right time too.
Yeah, you mentioned their 5 remaining games. All of those games, like you said, against good teams. Each of those 5 teams have at least 13 wins on the season. So they're going to have some good challenges closing out the year. You talked about their winning streak that they're on right now. They've scored 65 or more points in 4 of those games in that 6-game win streak. And, you know, this is just a team that is consistently reliable. They've had 17 or more wins the last 5 years. And at this point in the season, they have 13, a chance still to try to get close to that 17 number if they can pick up some wins late here. They were 17-11 last year. So they're kind of right there where they were last year. And like you said, the same players they've relied on all season have really not let them down at any point this year. They're really going to need them here in the last few games.
Yeah, and the good news is about this remaining 5-game stretch that you mentioned is very, very challenging. If they lose a game, I don't think it's going to hurt them too much.
Correct,
with the QRF-wise, and I think that's going to go a long way. But you've got Prep tonight, like we said, and you end the season with St. Agnes, which could if they can beat Prep and St. Agnes, you might be able to see the Crusaders jump up into the 3rd spot, which would be huge for them. Let's jump over to section 3, or actually 4A, and we'll jump kind of looking at the Metro East from afar too. But Two Rivers, since the last show, they are 3-0, and in the last 11, they're 9-2. Their last 3, they've won by an average of 37 points, and they've scored 80 points a game. So they are rolling. They're playing some really good basketball right now. They close South St. Paul, North St. Paul, and Matamidi, which should all be huge victories. But then they've got Delano on the 19th. That's going to be a game I wish we could actually see that one, because that's 2 really good teams. But that game against Delano could have a lot to say in the seeding process. Yeah,
Delano 16-6 on the season, and I wrote that down as really their last tough challenge here on the season. You talked about how they've been really good as of late. That dates back even to around the holidays. They've only lost twice since Christmas, so they've been taking care of business late here. They're already approaching their win total from last year. They had 18 wins on the season last year, went all the way to the section championship before losing to Cretin-Durham Hall in a pretty close one. They've scored over 70 points 10 times this season, which at the girls' side of things, if you're reaching that number consistently, that's pretty impressive. You've got 3 players averaging double digits in scoring. Amundsen's averaging about 8 rebounds per game. So this is a team that's solid on both sides of the ball, and they seem to be clicking at the right time here, heating up towards the postseason.
If you look at the section real quick, QRF-wise, they're sitting in that 4 spot, but they've got a chance they can jump a little bit. If they can win all these games and beat Delano, win all the games, they would finish with 20 wins, which I think just looks good in the standings, So they need to see if they can get a little boost. Roseville, who's above them, really tough schedule, and then Eastridge is going to be your number 1 seed in that for sure. They're a pretty good team, but it's going to be fun to watch down the stretch, and hopefully the Two Rivers can get a good seed. So fortunate they're not in 3A still, because they probably could have ended that state tournament drought of almost 30 years. Let's finish with 3A, Simley and South St. Paul. Simley 1-3 since the last show with a lone win over North St. Paul. They finish at Harding against Tartan, and then against South St. Paul. That game against South St. Paul could basically be for that 7 or 8 seed. So they just have struggled all year. Like we've talked about, scoring, giving up a lot of points, and it's just been a tough season for Simley. Yeah,
and South St. Paul is the only team with a worse record than them in those 3 remaining games on the season. They've scored 30 or fewer points 7 times this season. They have back-to-back wins only once this season, and only 1 loss was by single digits, which just tells you they haven't been in a lot of these games that they're losing. So unfortunately, a lot of these games haven't been close. They're incomplete player stats online, so it's hard to say really who's kind of leading the way for this team. But bottom line is they're just not getting enough scoring either way.
That game against Harding coming up is a big seeding game too, so see what they can do. South St. Paul 1-4 since the last show. Again, just the lone win over North St. Paul. They are currently QRF-wise in the 8th spot. They've already lost to Simley, so they got to beat them again. They'll face each other in the 17th, but they have a chance to jump up a little bit too, but kind of the same tale as Simley that we talked about all year.
Well, and most of the remaining opponents other than Simley have above a 500 record, so it's not an easy finish to the season for them. They have just one win since 2026. The calendar turned over to 2026, so tough season for the Packers so far.
Boys side, St. Croix Lutheran Academy, kind of like the girls, riding a hot streak. 6 in a row. They've won 10 of their last 12. They are currently section standing-wise number 2, and since the last show, they've just been taking care of business. If you look at the conference, they're only a game behind Maranatha, and they're going to get a chance to play them on Game of the Week on Thursday with a chance to split the conference. And in the section, they're sitting at the 2 seed. They're going to get a chance to play Minnehaha after that Maranatha game with the number 1 seed for the section up on the line. So a bunch of big games coming up here for St. Croix Lutheran, and we'll get a chance to see one of them on Thursday.
But that's what you want. You want meaningful games. You hear athletes and coaches talk about that all the time. You want to play in meaningful games. You want the games to matter. You want every point to matter. And St. Croix Lutheran Academy is going to have a chance to do that. They've got 6 games remaining on the season. They're not going to reach their win total from last year, even if they win out. But they've got a chance to still hit the 20-win mark if they win out here or get into the high teens. They've got 4 players averaging around 10 points per game or more, which I know we've talked about all season. Just impressive that they've been able to fill some of those shoes that they lost last year of the players that were consistently contributing for them. It seems like a lot of new players have stepped up in their absence and have really helped take care of this team.
They're a team that you've got those, roughly those 4 guys that on any given night can probably give you 15 to 20.
Yep.
So that type of balanced scoring is really important. And I just really have liked what I've seen out of St. Croix Lutheran this year. And hopefully they can finish with enough wins. They should be at least a 2 seed in this section, I would imagine, because the games they drop down the stretch, if they do, would probably be Maranatha or Minnehaha, which is not going to hurt them too much.
Yeah.
So they should be sitting pretty good come playoff time. Let's jump over to section 3A, and we've got South St. Paul, St. Thomas, and Simley in this section. South St. Paul, let's start with the Packers. 2-2 since the last show, but the losses come to Tartan and Matamidi, 2 really good teams. They beat St. Thomas Academy again, so that basically locks them at least into a 2 seed, and they finished with a pretty favorable schedule that if I'm looking at it and I'm placing my odds and placing bets on it, at worst, I think they would go 5-2.
Yeah.
So they're going to finish with a pretty gaudy record as well. And the one thing I really like about this team, we've talked about it all year, is you've got 5 really high-end scorers that can give you any given night. You don't know who's going to pop and go off that night, kind of like we talked about with St. Croix, but very, very talented team. They have a chance they can actually catch South and be the number 1 seed, which this might be the year that they can maybe, knock on wood, but end that state tournament drought.
Yeah, and to your point about the stretch to close out the season, they play Tartan one more time, who's undefeated right now. But other than that, all of their opponents are 500 or lower. So like you said, a good chance to really pick up some wins late. And like you said, all 5 of their usual starters are averaging about 10 points per game or more. Dante Branch leads the way with 22 points per game. But to have pretty much all of your starters show up night after night, I mean, usually a good basketball team at the high school level is maybe going to have 2 or 3 guys that are in double-digit scoring on average, or being able to get you consistent points. To have all 5 of your guys get you points night after night, just so even. And like I said, I just love the way South St. Paul plays. They're gritty, they play tough, they play fast. They're really not afraid of anything, win or lose. And I think that's a great quality for a team to have, and that's going to do them well come the postseason.
They finished with Tartan, so you have the chance, too. That game could be more or less meaningless, quote-unquote.
Yeah.
You might, if you have guys dinged up, you could rest them get another couple days of rest before the playoffs. So things are scheduling out really nice for the Packers. St. Thomas Academy is right behind them, nipping at their heels. The 1-3 since the last show, we saw them beat Simley in pretty convincingly. They look pretty good, and this is a team that kind of is the same way as a lot of our other teams. Pretty balanced scoring, a lot of really good basketball players. They finished with a pretty favorable schedule at all, and they are sitting in the 3 seed. Highland Park has a winning record in the 4, but the QRF really doesn't like Highland Park's wins. So I think St. Thomas if they can just take care of business down the stretch here, they should probably be your 3 seed, which puts them in a pretty favorable spot to make a nice little push here in the playoffs as well.
And we were talking about Tartan against South St. Paul. St. Thomas Academy lost to them by just 5 points.
That was a close one.
That game was happening at the same time that we were over at St. Thomas Ice Arena covering the game against Shakopee, and there was some kids in the press box who had the game pulled up. That came down to the wire. I think at one point it was just a 3-point game late in that one, and Tartan held on and won by 5 points. So they played an undefeated Tartan team really tough. And you know what? Win or lose, they've been in a ton of high-scoring games. So, I mean, they can stick with the best of them. They haven't always come out on the winning side of some of those, but they're right there. And as we've always said, this is a good team. They just don't always get the wins. But I think they've got a chance to pick up a few more here before the season is over.
I'm not going to lie. I was watching that game in the truck as well while we were doing the
I wish I was
game.
watching the game, too. I was listening to the kids next to me. I'm like, what's going on over there? Did they pull ahead or no?
Let's jump to Two Rivers. They have lost 3 in a row, but we saw them a couple weeks ago take on Simley at home. They won pretty convincingly. If you look at the section they're in, section 4-3A, this is a really tough section as well. And the QRF absolutely hates their wins for whatever reason. They just are beating up on a lot of bad teams, I think. And they've only been in 4 close games, like within about 6 points. So it's just, again, a bizarre season for Two Rivers. But we saw in that game against Simley, they've got a lot of guys that can go off too. Martavius Allen had double digits in the second half. Jalen Greer went off. They've just got a lot of talented scoring too. They've got a nice winnable stretch down the end here where they should be able to win the majority of their games, but they got to get some wins here in a hurry to get up out of the bottom of this. But these top 4 teams in this section, Tartan #1 in state, you've got everybody, Eastridge, Cretin, all top 9 in state, and then Central has also received votes. So this section is loaded. Two Rivers is going to have their hands full, but still a good-looking team here down the stretch.
And their next 2 games, to your point, are against St. Thomas Academy and South St. Paul. They should be some pretty good battles. Hard to say who will come out on the winning side of those, but those will be some good tests for them. And then they've got a few more to finish out the season after that. They only have 4 total wins since January, so they have struggled at times. But again, I like this team. When you look at the players and when you actually watch them play, it feels like they're in every game. Lamont Michaels leads the team. He's pretty much been leading all season with about 14.5 points per game. But you throw out names of some of those other players that, they are talented kids and they can get you points when need be as well. So they're on pace to finish about where they finished last season. They had 12 wins last year. They're at 7 right now. So we'll see if they can pick up some wins. Maybe they get a win against a good St. Thomas or South St. Paul team here.
I feel like the last 5 or 6 games that we've covered of Two Rivers, there's been a different leading scorer in every game, which is a good sign. But maybe not a great sign. Maybe that's why the wins aren't there. Let's close with Simley. The Spartans have lost 5 in a row. It's been a rough season for Simley. Kind of been in turmoil all year. The good news is the section is not great. Not loaded with 1 or 2 elite teams. Bad news is down the stretch here, they play just a murderer's row to finish the season. So they're going to end up with a pretty rough seed, which is going to put them against one of those top teams. And so they're going to have their hands full the rest of the season and then when the playoffs start, unfortunately.
Yeah, you talk about that schedule to close out the season. They have undefeated Tartan on the schedule next. Then they play South St. Paul, although they did just beat them not too long ago back in mid-January. But they also have St. Thomas Academy, Matamidi on the schedule. They've recently lost to both of those teams. So this is not going to be an easy finish to the season. They have more wins than they did last year. They had 6 wins last year. They're already at 8 here. But hard to say if they're going to get another win to close out this season. It is going to be tough for them.
It will be. Well, let's close with Athlete of the Week. Let's start on the girls' side. Only saw the one girls' game that Simley win over South Central, but in that game, Jory Staples had a hat trick, and she was second in points for Simley this year. So she had a really good season, but she kind of led the way for Simley in the playoffs. A game that a lot of girls scored, but she got the hat trick.
Well, it was incredible. We had 10 goals scored in that game, and she was the only player with multiple goals on the game. And Ella Sanders, their leading scorer, didn't have a single goal in that game. So a lot of different players stepping up in that one, and nice to see some new faces. I believe someone even scored their first goal of the season in that game. So a lot of different players stepping up, but Staples really led the way, getting the hat trick and taking care of business against South Central.
We mentioned earlier Sanders graduating leading scorer. Jory Staples comes back as the leading point scorer next year, as she'll be a junior next year. So she should be in line for a big season next year. On the boys' side, we'll stick with hockey. South St. Paul over Tartan, 5-0. Roman Knight had the hat trick against Tartan. he has had a fantastic season, leading the Packers in points, like we mentioned before, 11 goals in the last 7 games. I think he has had 2 hat tricks in there. So he's been awesome for the Packers this year, and it's been a very refreshing season for South St. Paul to see them kind of bounce back.
The Packers have needed a kid like this on their team, and they're getting it in Roman Knight, and he was tremendous in that game. I just love the way he plays. I mean, he will take that puck down the ice and slice through the defense. He'll find space, and he's got a heck of a shot. Scored a couple different ways in that game to get that hat trick, so it only made sense to give him the boys athlete of the week. So we got a hat trick on the girls' side, hat trick on the boys' side. That makes our job easy today.
Very much so. And Roman Knight, just a junior, so he'll be back next year. South St. Paul actually returning quite a bit of goal scorers from this last season. So, well, that's going to do it for us. For Alexis, I'm Toby. We'll catch you next time on SportsZone.